One of the things your objectives are as an insurance agent is to change the way in which you converse with your prospect. We're used to on an everyday basis with people we know to talk in a yes no fashion. So like, did you have a good day or bad day? Do you want to sit out here or come in? Right? Well, that's not quite a yes no question, but like we think in kind of binary way when we ask questions a lot of the time. But the quality of the answer to a yes no question is just surface oriented. Yes, he had insurance, or no, he didn't. What we need to do instead is change how we talk and switch to an open-ended way to ask questions, especially in the presentation and the pre-qualifying section.
Okay, so how did you handle your husband's passing?
Yeah, even more specific. How did you guys tell me more about how you guys paid for your husband's passing? So we want to again, when you, as the person asking the question, you get to frame the narrative. What I mean by frame the narrative is like a question in a sense is a way to box the thinking around how your client responds, right? Like when I ask, how did you guys deal with the funeral? Well, you could answer that financially. You could answer that emotionally, right? So that's a little too open-ended. So in this case, since our intent here is to uncover the experience with paying for it, we need to reword it and say, well, so I got a question for you. You mentioned your husband passed away. How did you guys financially pay for the burden of his final expenses? That's a little bit more specific. And it gives you, well, here it goes right into, well, the burden was covered with life insurance. And then, well, how was that like having life insurance as opposed to not having coverage? Right. So then we can kind of start to frame the responses in such a way that, I hope I'm explaining this good. We ask the question in a way to get the kind of answer that we want. Hopefully that makes sense. It's almost like if you guys have heard of the idea of a leading question, right? Like leading questions assume something is the way it is, even though it might not be. Like when I say, so how did you guys take care of the burden of your final expenses? Who said it was a burden, right? But we're calling it a burden because it serves our purpose in the sense of distinguishing not being prepared as a burden. Does that make sense? So the client responds in a way with that kind of leading question, with that assumption that's a burden. All right. So this to me, that the quality of the answer you're going to get out of something like that is better than just a yes question on its own. Now, sometimes you follow up with that and say, okay, well, how'd you guys take care of it? And that's good too. But I would rather you get good at just asking one question that does it all. And that's an example of how I would do it. Okay. Yeah. And then when they give you the story about, oh, we had insurance. Awesome. So tell me more about how you guys were able to take care of it with insurance. How did it make you feel to know that your husband was smart and prepared? That's, again, another leading question. Smart and prepared, right? I kind of just assumed that. Maybe he wasn't smart. Maybe she took the policy out of him and he was unprepared, right? But we're framing this because we want to compare and contrast. Here's where the smart, intelligent people are. They're prepared. They pay for life insurance. And everyone else is not that, right? We want to be with the people who are smart, not with the people who aren't, right?
Yeah, I got a question. Just, I'm all drugged up now, so I'm starting to talk. So, I got a question, like, dealing with this situation here. Like, okay, let's say someone says, yeah, my husband did have life insurance, but he only had 10,000 and I still had a chip in for something, but now this person at her age and health can only get about 10,000 that she could afford. Like, how would you handle that? Because now she already knows 10,000 is not enough.
Okay, so you had 10,000 in coverage, but it sounds like it wasn't enough. Is that right, Mrs. Prospect?
Yeah,
you're Mrs. Prospect, John. So yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, what happened? How did you kind of tell me more about the price and how you handled it?
Oh, I've heard about, funeral homes charging more, blah, blah, blah. You know how to go. So
where I'm going with this, John, is I'd want to explore like what she did to take the difference of. What kind of funeral did he get? Was it, the song and dance behind you in the gold crusted casket? Was it, does she know that you can get a cheap funeral for $7,000 or $8,000? These are things I want to plant in her mind if I get that sense. Okay. And also the old, what is it? Something's better than nothing, right? So I'm going to be planting those seeds too, right? So what would it be like if you had no coverage? How would they take care of it? Like, so sometimes the answer is, sometimes you can't get everything you want, but you can get what you need. And I think most prospects presented with this the right way will opt for what they need, even if it's less than what they want. But most people aren't so binary in their decision making that, well, if I can't get exactly down to the penny what I want, I don't want anything. I'd rather screw my family entirely than partially, right? Most people aren't going to think like that. And again, where this really becomes an issue is more at the end, when you take their budget and show them what they got and the three price choices, and you tell them what you recommend. And that's when you've got to drive it home that, hey, look, I know you wanted 10,000, that you had that experience with your husband, that you needed more, but here's why I'd recommend the 8 or the 10 and not more, because first of all, it's in your budget. We can look higher if you want to, but this is your budget. And I respect that. I want to make sure that you're buying something you can easily afford. Second of all, you can still do it for 8 or 10. The secret is you just can't have your family buy a bunch of stuff that you don't need. You might have to do, a one-day visitation. It might be a simple burial, right? You might have to get a basic casket, but I assure you, you can get buried for this. And truthfully, think about it. What's the better options? Getting something and covering this, albeit not the most that you want, or just not getting anything at all? What's a better choice for you? What's a better choice for your family? Right. And you agree with me, 8,000 is better for your family than nothing. So why don't we start with that? And who's your beneficiary? So I'm going to address that more at the end, because that's when it's going to matter, because that's when they're finally going to get down to the point where they're going to be like, oh, that's not quite what I wanted. Well, it's time to address it, because I haven't showed them price up to this point. Okay. So I've got everything else in my favor, because this is exactly what they want. They're excited. It's a great policy. They've learned the differences. They feel strong about me, my connection, my expertise. This one little thing is going to be mitigated right at the end. And I'm going to give and it's going to be a good reason why they should proceed anyway. Okay.